everybody, it's Brandon Adams, the host of DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. And you know it's a big day around DawgNation. We begin this show early, but we want to be on the air as quickly as possible to deliver all the big news that's going to happen here over the course of the next few minutes. A lot of big names expected to ink their national letters of intent. I'm talking about uncommitted Jamari Salyer, the five-star offensive lineman. We're going to cover that live today. We'll be listening in on what Devon Wilson has to say, Micah Parsons also as well. James Cook, the running back, expected to sign with Georgia here in the next few minutes. We're all over all of it as it's expected to be a historically good day for the Georgia Bulldogs. Great time for you to be with us as we get going. DawgNation Daily begins right now.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
And it is a day that Georgia fans expect to remember for quite some time. The early signing period begins for 2018, the 2018 class here at the end of 2017. It's a perfect time for you to be with us here today on DawgNation Daily, a very different kind of version of our show. Normally, if you listen to the podcast or radio version of this show, what you may hear today is going to sound a little bit different as we are covering live here like we always do during the 10 o'clock hour. In this case, a little earlier than the 10 o'clock hour. All the twists and turns of signing day 2018. Georgia expecting a major haul. Some names we already know. Some names Georgia fans have their fingers crossed for. We're going to talk about it all, including the surprises that might come in here throughout the day. Good to have you with us. Let me sort of set the stage here initially for some of what's going to unfold here over the course of the next few minutes. If those of you who are watching us on video, this is why we're kind of coming on live today early so we can be kind of set up and ready to go in place a lot of this stuff as it unfolds. We'll expect four-star running back James Cook to make his signature official here a little bit later on. As you know, there has been a little bit of chatter with Cook along the way, given the fact that he took a bit of a surprise visit to Florida State over this past weekend. But we'll expect him to kind of come in and make that signature today and come in and hopefully be official here in just a few minutes. We'll give you coverage of that as it unfolds. Also, we'll be watching Micah Parsons, the five-star defensive end from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, who took his official visit to Georgia this past weekend. Parsons, one of those sort of mercurial figures who has shown a lot of love to Georgia on social media over the last, I think, 48 to 72 hours. The expectation from many people is that he'll still ultimately sign with Penn State, but we'll be watching closely to see what Micah Parsons does when that goes down. There's also the thought here of what's going to happen with Devon Wilson, the defensive back, the one-time Florida commit from one of the prime programs down in South Florida. He is expecting to make his announcement official with a signature coming up in just a few minutes. Georgia fans obviously watching this for a chance to bring in another elite defensive back to kind of fully round out this class of 2018. And then maybe the centerpiece of the early discussion here this morning on DawgNation Daily and around DawgNation, wherever Georgia fans are gathered. In Atlanta, Georgia, Pace Academy's own Jamari Salyer, who is one of the primetime prospects in the entire country, really. And as Jeff Santella said, and if you're watching us live on video right now, you do see the scene right there at Sports and Social, which is in the Battery, Atlanta, which is near SunTrust Park, where the Atlanta Braves play their home baseball games. That's a setup today for a lot of the announcements that are going to be made here around the world of college football. Jamari Salyer among those here really in just a few minutes. Salyer will make his college decision known. He'll sign his letter of intent, and we'll look forward to covering that for you live here today on DawgNation Daily. Of course, we'll also talk to Mike Johnson here, my partner from AT&T SEC Country Live, coming up in just a few minutes as well. We'll get some thoughts from him on the entire wide range of recruiting stories that are out there today. And, of course, a lot of your comments a part of our discussion here as well as we really try to follow the twists and turns as it all unfolds about what could be just a monumental day for the Georgia Bulldogs and certainly the DawgNation fan base. I love what Bill Brumbelow says in the comment section. He says, "Go Dogs, how exciting for us all." And, you know, Bill, last night we were at the Marlowe's Emory Point. It was our Countdown to Signing Day event. We've done a lot of these leading up to the start of signing day. And last night we were there on the eve of the beginning of this period. And what you expressed there in the comment section is so similar to the message that we heard from so many people, which is, you know, a lot of my audience, and a lot of the folks who read the content here at DawgNation.com, I think they've been waiting a long time for not just the success on the field that Georgia's enjoying, obviously being in the Rose Bowl and in the college football playoff, that speaks for itself, but to also have a chance to stockpile the kind of talent that makes that more than kind of a one-year anomaly, more than sort of a one-year wonder. Georgia building some permanence here with its number 3 overall class for the class of 2017, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite Team ranking. A class here in 2018 that's at least going to be that good, may even be number 2, or I guess if all the dominoes fell the right way for Georgia, may have a chance to be number 1. And I say it all the time that one of my favorite things about doing DawgNation Daily is the opportunity to sort of share this moment with Georgia fans and DawgNation. And I can tell you that, Bill, there is such an unbridled sense of enthusiasm right now for just how big and how fantastic this class might be before it's all said and done. And one of the guys that Georgia fans hope to be a part of that class is Jamari Salyer, the 5-star offensive lineman from Pace Academy. We will carry his announcement live here on DawgNation Daily. Now, if you're listening to the audio version, the radio, the podcast, you may know by the time you hear this what Jamari Salyer is going to do, but you can enjoy this with all of us, as a lot of us find this out for the first time. So we'll get ready to take that here in just a moment. Derek Lucas also reminding us that Adam Anderson's going to make his decision a little later on today. In fact, while we wait for Jamari Salyer to go here, let's give you a little bit of a preview for how the rest of the day is going to unfold. If you're trying to schedule yourself, if you're trying to figure out where you're going to be throughout the day here is a look at kind of some of the big names that are coming out today. And we're going to be back on the air for you later on the DawgNation Facebook page for coverage of a lot of this. Justin Fields, the 5-star quarterback, he's going to make his signature official at a ceremony at his high school, Harrison High School. That's sometime around noon Eastern time today. Around that same time at Sports and Social, where Jamari Salyer's making his announcement and signing his letter of intent. Chris Smith, the 4-star defensive back, who was such a thrill to have with us last night at the Marlowe's Emory Point, he's going to make it official. Adam Anderson, sometime around 12:30, and I should really stress that these are approximate times. Sometimes ceremonies have a way of sort of going off at a slightly different time than you expected, but Adam Anderson is set to go down sometime around 12:30 today. Then a couple big ones for the Georgia Bulldogs in terms of will they or won't they. Let's start with approximately 2:30 p.m. Eastern time when Cade Mays, the 5-star offensive lineman from Knoxville, Tennessee, is set to choose between Clemson and Georgia. A lot of online chatter as of late that Mays is going to choose Georgia, and really to the disappointment of folks in Knoxville, Tennessee, to the excitement potentially of Georgia fans, and really to the disappointment of Clemson fans who've thought they've trended on this one for a while. We'll all have to find out together around 2:30 p.m. exactly what Cade Mays is going to do. And then another big sort of 50-50 split type decision between Alabama and Georgia for the 5-star defensive end, Brenton Cox, a part of what could be a whole host of elite pass rushers before it's all said and done. Brenton Cox, though, will be one of those guys that goes at 3 p.m., around 3 p.m. Eastern time today. And, of course, a lot of news starting to roll in here. We are going to give you an update on a lot of this as it happens, including, I guess, the first big one we can tell you about. It is confirmed now that Micah Parsons, the 5-star defensive end, has chosen Penn State. And, you know, this is one we talked about on DawgNation Daily yesterday. Parsons, would he sort of shock the world by choosing Georgia coming off the official visit? Would that be the thing that goes down here? He'd obviously put a lot of information out there on Snapchat, put a lot of love for Georgia out on social media here the last 24 hours. But that's not the way this ultimately goes down. Parsons does choose Penn State here, and I think there had been for a while sort of a thought that maybe this was, I hate to say a troll job, that's probably too harsh of a word to use, but maybe a misdirection on Micah Parsons' part, that he was obviously had a great time as official visit to Georgia and was still feeling some of that love even after he got back up to Harrisburg. But these things have a way of kind of wearing off over time, and when it's all said and done, you kind of go back and you reset your own decision kind of back where it was before all of this went down. Obviously, Parsons did enjoy all of his official visits, the Georgia one included, but ultimately it is not Georgia for Micah Parsons. It is Penn State. We'll give you a chance to react to that in the comment section, and we'll see how that impacts some of the other decisions that are made today, including the guy that I was just talking about, the 5-star defensive end, Brenton Cox, a very similar player profile to a certain extent to Micah Parsons. We'll be able to see exactly how some of this plays out here throughout the time. Tim Tatum says, not a surprise. By the way, I guess Jamari Salyer is getting ready to go here. We'll make that announcement. Let him make his announcement live from Sport and Social in the shadow of SunTrust Park here in just a moment. We'll go to that as soon as he's ready to begin his conversation. But just to reflect back on what Tim Tatum was just saying in the comment section, maybe not a surprise that Micah Parsons chooses Penn State, given what a lot of the online chatter had been. Sometimes the late sort of news here can be false positives, and apparently the positive chatter about Parsons as of late was a false positive. Of course, as Jordy Mathis says in the comment section, come on, Jam. Obviously, a reference to Jamari Salyer, who you see right there on your screen, getting ready to make his college announcement here in just a moment. That's going to be a big one for Georgia fans, one that a lot of Dog fans will definitely be crossing their finger on. It is great to have with us here today on DawgNation Daily as we cover all of this. While we wait on the Salyer situation to unfold here, and we'll be going to that just as soon as I've been given the all clear to do that. While we're waiting for that to unfold, I will remind you of another piece of news kind of coming out here this morning. Also, maybe not unexpected, but this does qualify as news. 4-star wide receiver Elijah Moore flips from Georgia to Ole Miss. The story from the Georgia side here is maybe not unexpected. There's been a lot of movement with Georgia towards Tommy Bush, a receiver that some say that could kind of fit the Javon Wims mold. For Georgia, what Wims has done for Georgia this year, Bush may be the kind of player that could do that for Georgia. You'll have to wait to February to find out what Tommy Bush is going to do. But Bush may have had a spot open up for him in Georgia's class today, given the fact that Elijah Moore has flipped to Ole Miss. And by the way, Ole Miss doing a pretty good job here getting Matt Corral and Elijah Moore as part of the same class for a program that's decimated by NCAA issues. That's a couple pretty good offensive pieces to kind of bring into the fold there. Greg Williams says Parsons is going to be lucky to play the Dogs in the next few years in the college football playoffs. And yeah, I mean, I understand what Greg Williams is saying about that. There's always going to be some disappointment when a guy doesn't choose your school. But the truth is, geography matters here, and getting Parsons out of Pennsylvania was always going to be a tough pull for the Dogs. And by the way, Trey Hill has made it official. He is officially signed with the Georgia Bulldogs. That is a done deal for another one of the nation's top offensive guards. But it's Jamari Salyer who's the man of the hour right now. He's next up to make his commitment official, and then he'll sign his letter of intent out after that, and we'll go to him as soon as he's ready to start speaking there. Really not too far away from Pace Academy at Sport and Social, which is a sports bar at Battery, Atlanta, which is connected to SunTrust Park, where the Atlanta Braves play their baseball games. So J.C. Howell weighing in about the fact that he would like to see Tommy Bush in a Georgia uniform as the class of 2018. And this is kind of a situation that Georgia finds itself in right now where there are a lot of fast-moving parts and a lot of preferences for fans of, hey, I wanted Bush to be a part of this class anyway. You're going to hear a lot of those opinions expressed here as Georgia tries to maximize the 24 guys they can sign right now, the 85 guys can have on the roster. Georgia's looking to do that. John Williams Adams says yay about Trey Hill, and I think that's an important thing to bring up as, a lot of times it's almost like we put on the back burner the guys that we already knew were coming to Georgia. But when Trey Hill announced his commitment a few days ago, that was a big win for the Dogs. And seeing that letter of intent become official, I do think is a big part of the bedrock that Georgia's building for its future. Obviously, the offensive line coach, Sam Pittman's a big part of that. Bringing in guys like Trey Hill, trying to do some work with Jamari Salyer. And speaking of Salyer, here live in Atlanta, let's check in on the Salyer situation right now as he gets ready to make his college decision. Take a look.
You want them to do, help the team be successful. It's been a joy and it's been an honor. We're very blessed to have both of them.
Okay, Jamari. Obviously, a big decision coming up. Without saying who, talk about why this one school you're about to pick. What was it about that school you said that's the place for me?
It's a great place for one. I know academics. With the group in this place, I know I can go on and do great things. Off the field. I trust the staff. I trust great people in the town, and I'm excited to do it.
Give me your favorite. Last question of high school for you. Give me your favorite memory of playing at Pace Academy.
Oh, winning the state championship, easy. Winning the state championship was amazing. Before I got Slade to stop screaming, that was good. It was a ball. I had a great time.
Okay, I guess all these people are here not to hear me talk. I guess it's time for you. 5-star U.S. Army All-American Jamari Salyer is about to make his college decision.
Get my hat on.
Obviously, got to keep the tradition up. Before I do this, I want to thank God. Thank him every day for this opportunity. Thank my mom, my grandma, everybody up here. You all had a great impact on me, and also the Pace community. But I will continue my next 4 years of college at the University of Georgia.
And there you see it with the Georgia Bulldogs hat on. Jamari Salyer has made it official. The 5-star offensive lineman will become a member of the Georgia Bulldogs 2018 recruiting class, punctuating his announcement the same way that Trey Hill punctuated his in the commitment video that we all saw. Go Dogs at the end. Simple, succinct, and well put if you're a Georgia fan here. And you can't help but think about the picture that's been all over social media over the last few days of Trey Hill, of Jamari Salyer, standing alongside each other with some other Georgia offensive linemen, standing big and tall and proud, and really an incredible future that Sam Pittman's putting together for this Georgia program along the offensive line. We all know that success in college football, especially in the SEC, virtually begins and ends with the lines of scrimmage, and Georgia's certainly doing its part to build an incredible offensive line for the future. Trey Hill making his signature official as a 2018 Georgia signee a little earlier, and here just a moment ago in a video that you've seen with us live here today on DawgNation and as a part of DawgNation Daily, a guy that we have talked about for a very long time. The 5-star Jamari Salyer, introduced by his coach at Pace Academy, Chris Slade, goes on to make it official. He will wear the red and black. He's got the Georgia hat on. An incredible moment for the Georgia Bulldogs. Greg Williams in our comment section on Facebook Live calls it the Wall of Georgia, and it certainly seems to be that way. And I've had such a good time watching the series of videos that Jeff Sintel and our team here at DawgNation and SEC Country have been putting together of Salyer in his senior season there at Pace Academy. And, you know, one of the things that impressed me the most about him, and y'all know I'm not a scout, I'm not a former player or coach, so this is just a fan's opinion, but what does impress me is it's not just the size that Salyer brings to the table. It's the way that he carries that size. I say this a lot of times. He's not just big, but he also has good posture. You know, he carries the size of a 5-star offensive lineman like he knows what to do with it. This is not a guy that seems to be needing to grow into his body. This is a guy who seems to have both sort of physically and spiritually, mentally sort of reached the kind of maturity that makes him the kind of player that can make a pretty early impact at Georgia. And I can't help but think about what it is that Kirby Smart has said about Salyer's high school teammate, Andrew Thomas, over and over again during Thomas's freshman season. Two guys that played together at Pace Academy. That's why the comparison is relevant here. But over and over again, the one thing that Kirby Smart has said about Andrew Thomas is it's maturity. It's maturity. It's maturity. That's the thing that enabled Andrew Thomas to be an early contributor to Georgia and a starter at right tackle this season. Thomas and Salyer are obviously very good friends. They come from Pace Academy, a terrific academic institution in Atlanta. They have a great NFL, mindset coach like Chris Slade, who knows football at the highest level. And the same way that Andrew Thomas was trained up and ready to go. I would also add to that Trey Blunt, another Pace Academy player who is a part of the Georgia class of 2017 and contributed to Georgia this season. They all seem to have that hallmark sense of maturity. I think that Jamari Salyer is going to have some of that as well, and I think he has a chance to be a really big-time early contributor to the University of Georgia. In fact, just in here to DawgNation Daily is this very special Diehards commitment video produced and honoring Jamari Salyer, who made his announcement and his commitment to Georgia a moment ago. Here's a chance for you to learn a little more about Salyer right now.
All right, here we go. My name is Jamari Salyer. I've been rated as one of the top prospects in the nation. I've made my commitment, and I will share that today. But before I do, you need to know about my first football practice with my father.
Jay Boogie, let's go. Time for your first football practice.
I'd had my first football practice at Glenwood Hills.
Tomorrow, let's go.
My dad taught me the basics, and he told me to run some laps, and then he left. While I was running, I thought, was he gonna come back? He met me later with a Powerade and some Skittles. He asked me had I ever stopped running. I told him I never did. I learned about integrity that day. Integrity is what you do when no one's watching. But today, everyone will be watching.
And the SEC Country Offensive Lineman of the Year award goes to Jamari Salyer, Pace Academy.
When some guys commit, they dance around it to keep everyone guessing. That's not me. I just want to come out with it. First of all, I'd like to thank God. Second of all, I'd like to thank my Pace Academy football family, coaches, players, both sides of the ball. You know what I'm saying? I want to tell my boy Zeus, keep his offensive guards up. We ride with him. And one more thing I'd like to say. Any dogs out there who want to be a part of a rare breed, meaner than savages. You don't care about stars and rankings. You want to break records instead of listening to them. Come to Georgia. I'm Jamari Salyer, and I'm a Georgia Bulldog. Yes, sir.
What an incredible video. What an incredible moment there as Jamari Salyer makes his commitment official at Sport and Social in Atlanta a moment ago, and then in a video produced exclusively with our friends here at Diehards and obviously sponsored by Kroger, Jamari Salyer now explaining to the world why it is that he chooses the Georgia Bulldogs. You hear the shout out there in that video to Zamir White, the five-star running back. Obviously a reference to the fact that he and the other offensive line are going to be opening a lot of holes for Zeus in the future. And then a challenge to anybody else, and I love this line, that anybody that wants to come to Georgia to break records and not just listen to them. And, I told some of our folks that worked with us here on the show, it almost seemed like a reference and kind of a callback to the great Suge Knight speech at the Hip Hop Awards many years ago. A really cool-looking moment there for Jamari Salyer, who explains why it is that he wanted to come to Georgia and exactly how it is that he got to this point. And you understand from the film that you see there and all the things that go down about exactly why it was that Jeff Sintel, who is our DawgNation recruiting insider, why it is for such a long time, he's been telling us that Jamari Salyer is one of the best interior offensive linemen he's ever seen. Nation's top offensive guard, obviously, but not just for the year of 2018, but for many years. That's how, obviously, Jeff views Salyer as a prospect. Taz Ali, also in the comment section, says best video ever. I got to tell you, that was a pretty good one there for Salyer, and it's certainly worthy of him, who is a terrific addition to this Georgia class for sure, as the five-star does commit to Georgia. His letter of intent will be on the way here soon as well. We're also kind of covering everything else going on with Georgia recruiting today. As some of you mentioned in the comment section, John Fitzpatrick, the Marist tight end, has made things official. He has signed with Georgia. He's on his way in. We're expecting to hear official word on James Cook, who's thought to be signing sometime during the 10 o'clock hour. I'm obviously on the air right now. I'm sort of following this with myself and some of the folks here who are helping us. So we'll keep our eye on James Cook, the signature coming in, being official on that. I can tell you that Micah Parsons earlier today did make his choice to go to Penn State instead of Georgia. So that's one that some Dog fans will have to cross off their list. I know there was a lot of chatter here over the last 24 hours that maybe Parsons was going to go the direction of Georgia. Ultimately, that does not happen, though. He chooses Penn State. Elijah Moore, the four-star wide receiver that was a Georgia commit, he flips to Ole Miss. The thought here is that may open up a spot for Tommy Bush, who Georgia fans will have to wait until February to see become a part of the Georgia class if that does indeed happen. We'll continue to kind of watch a lot of this go on, including Devod Wilson, who I also haven't heard any official word on yet, but we'll bring that to you here live today on DawgNation Daily as it becomes available. So that's kind of the story on the day. We'll also continue to take your comments and follow a lot of this stuff as it goes through. But obviously the big headline for right now is Georgia has added another five-star. It is the five-star offensive guard, the nation's #1 guard prospect, Jamari Salyer, a part of a bedrock future for Georgia, the offensive line position. Why don't we find out a little more about Salyer right now? Let's bring in a guy that knows how to play the offensive line at a top level in the SEC. He was a former All-American. He led Alabama to a national championship. He's my partner on AT&T SEC Country Live. Let's talk to Mike Johnson right now. All right, we'll say hello to Mike Johnson here. He is my partner at AT&T SEC Country Live. Of course, he joins us each and every afternoon there on the SEC Country Facebook page, and good enough to be with us here today on AT&T SEC Country Live as well. Mike, first of all, let me say good morning and thanks for being with us here on what is a busy signing day, not just for the Georgia Bulldogs, but all around the SEC. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. It's keeping my head on a swivel for sure. There's a lot of news coming out of all different corners of the country, and there's a lot of new things going on with the new signing period. So it's definitely been kind of a work in progress, I feel like, for a lot of people in Alabama, and I'm sure it's been the same with you guys.
All right, so I'm not hearing Mike right now, so why don't we do this? Mike, if you don't mind, let me put you on pause and on hold here for a moment. We'll see if we can get my audio in, taken care of on that, so I'm able to hear you. We'll catch up with you in just a moment and try to talk about a lot of the stuff that's going to go on here. And while that's unfolding, I'll also take a second to talk to some of y'all as well. Lewis Martin in the comment section asked when Cade Mays announces. Obviously, after one 5-star offensive lineman's brought into the fold, a lot of Dog fans wonder when the next one will be coming in. Cade Mays is one of those guys who will be making his announcement later on today. It's going to be sometime around 2:30 p.m. In fact, we'll show you in just a moment the kind of the graphic that we showed you earlier that gives you a full schedule of kind of when some of these big names are set to go a little later on today. Cade Mays, though, the 5-star guard from Knoxville, Tennessee, he is expected to go around 2:30 p.m. today, so we'll look forward to a hearing on that. Michael Morrow says he was hearing Mike Johnson just fine. Yeah, the issue is not on y'all's end. The issue's on my end. So what I'm going to do here is get ready to listen to Mike, and we'll get ready to have him on the program here today because I do want to get Mike's thoughts on Jamari Salyer, what he likes about him as a player. So let me shift gears here with a slightly different pair of headphones and get ready to move on that discussion. Ken Wilkes asked the question about Tommy Bush. Any chance Georgia adds that wide receiver to the mix? Obviously on the heels of losing Elijah Moore. Moore goes to Ole Miss. I think the thought and the common opinion here is that Moore's departure means it may likely be a yes for Tommy Bush. The one drawback to that, though, is it will be February before Bush becomes officially a member of the class. All right, we got Mike Johnson ready to roll here. I should be able to hear him just fine now. Mike, are you with me? How you doing?
Hey, B.A., you got me, brother? Can you hear me?
All right. Let me hold on one more second. We'll get one more thing squared away on this, and we'll get this ready to go and ready to kind of unfold. Tom Gross says he thinks that Cade May is going to be a tackle wherever he plays in college. I know there's been some debate about that. You know, it does seem like there's a chance that Mays could be a right tackle. There also seems to be, you know, some thought that maybe at a place like Georgia, he could slide in, play one of those guard positions. He's obviously, you know, the kind of guy that could dominate in that spot. So, you know, that's kind of the thought there on Cade Mays. Royal Blue, going back to Parsons here just for a moment, says Parsons is a great player, but maybe not a UGA-style athlete. Good luck, though. And that's the thing. I mean, I think what Royal says there is the appropriate thing to bring up, that from time to time, guys are going to choose another school. It could be Cade Mays later on today. Now, Georgia won with Jamari Salyer right there, lost with Micah Parsons, may win or lose with Cade Mays, and ultimately, what I like about our audience here on DawgNation Daily is that for the most part, these moments are treated as, let's wish these guys well. They made the choice they thought was right for them, and Georgia's got really very little to sweat here because no matter who says yes, who says no, the collection of yeses in terms of elite primetime players is going to far outweigh the no's, and ultimately Georgia's going to put together a very good class. Almost for sure, I'm going to be able to hear Mike Johnson when he speaks now. So, Mike, let me say one more time, good morning. Thanks for being with us. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Can you hear me? Take 3.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. I know that DawgNation is being heard all around college football right now as well after the announcement a moment ago from the 5-star offensive lineman, Jamari Salyer, who makes it official, nation's #1 offensive guard. Mike, as you know, a lot of Georgia fans also have their fingers crossed for Cade Mays, another 5-star offensive lineman going on later on today. But let me start with Salyer here for a moment. You obviously understand the offensive line position. You know how crucial it was to the success of the Alabama teams that you played for. What do you think about the fact that Georgia, in the work done in 2016, bringing in Ben Cleveland and Solomon Kinley, the work done in 2017, bringing in guys like Andrew Thomas, who started virtually all year for Georgia this season, and now adding Jamari Salyer to go along with Trey Hill for the class of 2018. What do you make of the work that Sam Pittman, the line coach, and Kirby Smart are doing in terms of bringing in elite offensive line prospects here to Georgia?
I think it starts to become almost scary for the rest of the SEC East and the rest of the SEC. I mean, I think it's crazy when you get the combination of recruiting mixed up with development. You can develop a team, in a lot of different ways, like Kirby Smart has done at Georgia for this year. You can develop a team into a championship team for 1 year. When you start recruiting guys, especially in the trenches, and a guy like Jamari Salyer, the way they've been recruiting for the last couple of years, then all of a sudden you're looking at, transferring this thing into a dynasty. It becomes not a one-hit wonder. All of a sudden you become good for 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road. You become good on the interior. You become good at the running back position. You become good rushing the passer. I love the way Kirby Smart has been trying to build this team, and you're starting to see, pen to paper with some of these guys hopping on board once again.
And then, one of the things we talked about with Salyer before you came on is this guy that goes to Pace Academy. That's one of the elite academic institutions, not just in Georgia, all of the South. His teammate Andrew Thomas has been praised. His high school teammate, soon-to-be future college teammate, has been praised by Kirby Smart for his maturity. I mean, as a guy that played, this offensive line position, how much is that sort of, emotional maturity and overall intelligence? I mean, how much does that sort of aid in your attempt to try to play early? Obviously, offensive line is probably underrated as a cerebral position. You got to know a lot of stuff and know how a lot of these parts fit in together to be able to play that position. When you bring in a guy who's well-trained by a coach in Chris Slade, educated like you get at Pace Academy, I mean, how much does that help Salyer with what he wants to do in the future?
It helps tenfold, BA. I mean, it really does when you talk about a guy of his age, but his stature, coming in and trying to make his mark right away on this Georgia program and become a fixture on this offensive line. You have to be able to not only learn your plays and learn what are the audibles, but you have to be able to think. It's not like sitting down and taking a multiple choice test. I mean, there's people running at you, hitting you in the mouth. You're having to chain within 5 seconds. You're having to communicate to the guys on either side of you. You're having to communicate with the quarterbacks and the running backs and really make changes to a game plan on a whim. Make changes to a game plan within seconds to think. And anytime you get a guy like that really has a good head on their shoulders, that has been a good student athlete, and is coming to a place like Georgia, I think it helps tremendously. You're going to have to get in, obviously, and get your grades accounted for. It's tough as a freshman. You have all these freshman classes you're going to take. You're going to study halls. Anytime you're doing that, it's tough. But you add football into it, and you need a guy like Jamari Salyer, the head on his shoulders, and obviously, Kirby Smart impressed with his work ethic. I think it helps tenfold for him coming in next year.
Artis Medford, who's watching the comment section, asked a question that I think is kind of an interesting one. Salyer is a guy that can play guard, may play center. Trey Hill is a guy who just made it official with his own signature a moment ago and committed to Georgia a few days ago. He's a guy that could play guard, could play center. When you think about the difference in someone who's more appropriate as a guard, more appropriate as a center, ultimately, what is the difference? Why would one guy be a better fit for guard, another guy be a better fit for center? What are you looking for if you're trying to make that decision?
Well, for me, first and foremost, it's foot speed. There's a lot of different categories to go. So you can look at arm length for an offensive tackle, being able to keep guys like Lorenzo Carter and Davin Bellamy off of you, keep them away from you. I think that's a big thing. I've seen guys do it with short arms, so that's not the only thing. But, when I look at guards, I look at they have a good base. They have good power in the hips, kind of a big butt, if you will, being able to roll their hips and roll these defensive tackles out of there. These 330-pound nose guards that you're going to see. I think when you go to the tackle position, you have to have a little bit better feet. You have to be able to react more. You're in a little bit more of an open space, and you have to be able to defend against the speed rush while also being able to, shut down the inside move. That's where really the men get separated from the boys in terms of that tackle position. Now, you could have a guy that comes in as a tackle and maybe is not as good shutting down that inside move and has to move to guard. Doesn't mean they're a bad player. Just means it wasn't the right fit. But, when I look at Jamari Salyer, I mean, he is a big fella. I think he's got guard written all over him. He plays with so much power, so much ability to roll the hips. And by that, I mean, to come off striking a guy in the chest with his face mask and then be able to stand him up and walk him backwards. That's rolling your hips. That's what Jamari Salyer is. That's why you see such a high grade there on all these recruiting websites. That's why he's so coveted, and that's why he becomes such an integral part of what they're trying to do up front. Sam Pittman and Kirby Smart along that offensive line.
A lot of talk in the comment section about four-star running back James Cook, who I'm still awaiting for official word. He was expected to sign here during the 10 o'clock hour. I'm imagining that's going to come down here in the next few minutes. We'll give you that confirmation when I can officially confirm it. Of course, I'm also in the studio doing the show, so some of this stuff's going to be a little bit late traveling to me, but we'll talk about it when it becomes official. And, Mike, before I get back to you with questions, I would say to our audience here that I don't think there's any reason to be concerned about James Cook. I know he took the visit to Florida State, and I know that There's always going to be some sort of chatter that bubbles up here in the final few hours before the signatures become official, but I believe that James Cook is all dog. I expect it to go down here really at any point in time in the next few minutes, but I believe that one way or another Cook's going to be a part of this Georgia class. But I guess, Mike, what I would ask you is, and I know that when you signed with Alabama, I guess it would have been before the 2006 season, if I'm doing the math correctly. Recruiting was a little bit different animal than it is today, but what are those kind of final moments, final days like for these guys who are either really weighing a decision between a couple different schools or second-guessing whether or not they've made the right decision? I mean, how much nervousness is in a stomach of a recruit right now as he gets ready to make this official?
Well, I think there's an array of it. My recruiting process was pretty streamlined. I was going to sign with Alabama. I was in love with Alabama. I loved what was going on there with Mike Shula and everybody else up there. But I have lived through some of my friends going through these processes and being aware of their emotions and being aware of how many things can teeter your decision. And I think it's tough. I mean, you're talking about kids now that, they don't even really know what they want to be in life. They don't even really know who they are in life, and they're about to make a decision that's going to affect, their entire future. You're a different person after you sign on the dotted line. I think a lot of it comes from comfortability. I think that once you get on campuses on these officials and you develop relationships with these coaches, you know where you want to go. A lot of different things affect a lot of different players. Some people want friends on the team. Some people want great academic institutions. Some people want places that can send them to the NFL. I think the more check boxes you can kind of mark off with these recruits, the better chance you have of landing them and the better chance that they're going to feel comfortable with their decision. I think Kirby Smart's done a great job of doing that. He was a guy that I watched recruit at Alabama for a few years. He has a way of making these kids feel at home, especially these guys from Georgia, and I think you're starting to see that play out in the way he's beginning to sign these guys. They feel comfortable with them. They feel comfortable with the relationships and the teammates and the program they're stepping into, and he is a train rolling down the tracks right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Jerry Lewis actually asked this in the comments section. Did you see this in Kirby when he was at Alabama while you were playing, that he was going to be the kind of coach that had this sort of insatiable energy to kind of create the recruiting momentum that's been able to be created? Did you see this future in, obviously you couldn't have predicted the whole thing, but did you see elements of this in Kirby Smart while y'all were both at Alabama together?
Absolutely. And, Kirby's a guy I count as a friend. He was an incredible guy and an incredible coach. And then once I left Alabama and being able to catch up with him at times off the field, he has that energy. He has that passion. He has that ability to get guys to play at another level. I think it's crazy sometimes when you see these younger coaches that have this calm demeanor. That's not Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart is a guy who, his team has taken on the personality of him. And I knew that from the minute that Kirby Smart stepped on the field with us at Alabama, that he was a guy that, he was a leader. He wasn't a follower. He was a leader. He was going to bring the energy and bring guys along with him. And, you're starting to see that play on the field. I think Georgia honestly plays exactly like Kirby Smart's personality. There's a lot of energy on defense, but there's a lot of toughness, and there's a lot of accountability, and that's exactly what Kirby Smart was as a friend and as a coach, and obviously as a head coach at Georgia now.
A couple more quick questions before I let you go. You're obviously a guy that, we do AT&T SEC Country Live together each and every day. We focus in on not just Georgia, but the entire SEC. You played Alabama. You talked to a lot of folks still in Tuscaloosa, and you see a lot of folks around the SEC. What do you think the reaction has been to just how quickly Georgia has risen up as a recruiting power here? Number 3 last year, maybe higher than that this year. Bringing in just really a collection of elite players, and it's all happened here pretty fast. What do you think the reaction sort of outside the DawgNation bubble has been to all of this?
I think, in terms of people in Tuscaloosa, such a healthy respect. And I don't know that it's that way when you go to Knoxville and Gainesville and obviously, Columbia, South Carolina, those teams having to deal with Georgia on a year in and year out basis probably aren't that happy about it. But, in terms of the people I talked to in Tuscaloosa, specifically the ones that know and root for Kirby Smart as a person, I think it's been a pretty, easy transition. Alabama is Alabama. Nick Saban's going to do Nick Saban things. I think Alabama fans were obviously hoping to see Georgia in the SEC championship game and are obviously hoping to maybe see Georgia in the national championship game. I think that them rising as a power in the East to Alabama's power in the West right now spells, to me, a lot of, possible good games in the future. I think that Nick Saban kind of gets re-energized at the thought of Kirby Smart, and I think a lot of fans feel the same way. So when you look around the SEC, I don't know that teams in the East are very happy for Kirby Smart, but there is a very healthy respect, I think, for Georgia's program in and around Tuscaloosa and the state of Alabama. And from the people I talked to, very happy for the success that he's had, and I don't think there's any end in sight for it.
Last thing from me, you mentioned a moment ago about one of the boxes that some recruits are looking to check off is the friends they'll get a chance to play with. And if I had to say one of the things that I think has been a really interesting development in recruiting here the last couple of years, and I'm sure you probably noticed it as well, it does seem like there is this desire for really good players to team up together in a way that maybe just didn't really used to be the case. I don't know if this is influenced by the super teams of the NBA, like LeBron James and the Golden State Warriors, things like that. I don't know if there's a reason why it's happened, but you do see a lot of these guys that seem to want to play together. We've referenced the picture of Jamari Salyer with other offensive linemen at Georgia this past weekend. These guys sort of like the idea of not just being a premier player themselves, but alongside other top-flight players. That, to me, is one of the real interesting developments in recruiting as of late is if you can convince one elite player to come to your program, that just seems to increase the likelihood that you can sort of coerce other elite players as well.
Yeah, it definitely does, and you're right. It has become a little bit of a trend, and it just, to me, it's a lot of these guys wanting to play with guys like them. I think that's the reason you see some of these, recruiters, some of the coaches that are hired. They go back to their home state. They go back to where they got their coaching start. They go back to where they have relationships with coaches because they can relate to these players. And it's the same way when you start to put these classes together. These guys are all going through the same thing. There's not many people on Jamari Salyer's team. There's a couple, but there's not a lot of them that are going through the same thing as Jamari Salyer or Cade Mays. A lot of those people that are in and around them on a daily basis don't really understand to the 10th degree what exactly they're going through. But the guys they're going on these official visits with, the other kids that are going to play college football, they get it. They understand it. And I think that's a big reason that, you see social media, and these guys are able to communicate, and they're able to make friends. They're able to keep up with each other. And that's just not something that was a part of the recruiting process when I was coming out of high school. Now these guys, they don't have to make attempts to know what's going on, with the recruiting process. They don't have to pick up a newspaper and read about recruits. They just look on their phone and they know exactly what each other are doing. And I think that has become a bigger part of the recruiting process because of the possible communication between these guys. I think it's a big deal.
All right, this afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we will cover not just how Georgia ranks here, but the rest of the SEC as well. A lot of storylines around this league this time of year, Mike. It's a brand new horizon for the sport, early signing period. SEC a big part of it. I look forward to talking to you about that today, this afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on AT&T's SEC Country Live.
I look forward to it too, brother. Get you a cup of coffee. It's going to be a long day for Georgia.
Yes, sir. A lot of fun. Good stuff there from Mike Johnson, who is really just a great guest to have on the show here today because he knows what it's like to go not just from high school to college, but from then college to the NFL, and his evaluation of Jamari Salyer there, who I think is for right now the big news of the day for the Georgia Bulldogs, that the 5-star offensive lineman does commit. He'll sign his letter of intent, and he'll become a member of the Georgia Bulldogs 2018 class. Mike sees a lot to like there with him. We'll await Cade Mays' decision a little bit later on. Let me give you an idea what's going to kind of unfold here over the course of the next few minutes. I want to sort of rehash everything that we've learned up to this point in time. I'll try to do that the best that I can. I'll also talk about what we're still waiting for here. I'll set the stage for the rest of the day, and I want to keep the format kind of loose and give you a chance to ask any questions you want to ask, and we'll do our best to sort of figure out kind of where all this is going. Obviously, a lot of you are asking about the so-called surprise that came up on DawgNation Daily this past Friday. I'll tell you what I do know about that coming up here in just a moment, so stick with us on that. We'll kind of do all of that. It's great to have you with us here today, of course, on DawgNation Daily. Let me start with this. Here is what has happened thus far today. We have seen Micah Parsons, the 5-star defensive end from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He has chosen Penn State. Going to anger some Georgia fans in that regard because of the Snapchat story and the Instagram that have had a lot of Georgia G's on them as of late. That appears to be a bit of a misdirection as Parsons went back to the school that most people thought he was going to go to anyway, and that was Penn State. So Parsons off the board for Georgia. He does choose Penn State. We are still awaiting word on James Cook. Now, obviously, anytime a guy like this is not officially in the fold as of yet, there's going to be a little bit of a, I guess, angst is maybe the right word to describe this, given the fact that Cook does take a visit to Florida State this past weekend. But I think that what Jeff Sentell said on DawgNation Daily yesterday is the most appropriate here on that, which is that, he goes to FSU, but he does not go with his mother. And you can go back to when Cook made his official visit to Georgia back a few weeks ago. I forget exactly which game it was, whatever game it was that Cook makes his official visit. His mother was very instrumental in that decision there, but she not with him in Tallahassee, so I don't think that's that big of a deal there on that front. I believe that Cook is eventually going to be a Georgia Bulldog, whether the signing comes in the next 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or the next half hour. I think it's all dog for James Cook. By the way, I'll continue the rehash here in a moment, but as I am saying that, there is some big news that does come to the Georgia Bulldogs here on this start of the early signing period. Georgia has added an elite defensive back as 4-star cornerback Davad Wilson. At one point, a Florida commit, decommitted from Florida, and now here at the beginning of early signing period, has committed to the University of Georgia. He'll sign his letter of intent there as well. Georgia adding a good-looking defensive back in Davad Wilson here. Another one of those names to celebrate for Georgia fans, as it's adding big-time guys here on the day that early signing period begins, not just finishing up with guys who had been in the fold, but adding some new guys as well. And listen, y'all know the way we roll here on DawgNation Daily. It is always fun to be able to not just add a player to Georgia, but take one from Florida. And this is a loss for the Gators, a win for Georgia, and a pretty good-looking player here as Davad Wilson into the fold here for Georgia in the class of 2018. So that's a big-time piece of good news for the Georgia Bulldogs. We'll keep that up. Bo Gilbert says, "Where y'all watching these commits?" Listen, I'm going to continue to unfold these and give them to you as they come out here throughout the day here. So Davad Wilson in the fold here for Georgia. Philip Jordan Wells says, "BA, keep up." Here's the thing. Like, it takes a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes for news to actually travel into the room where I am. I see some of y'all put in the comment section about it, but we've got a whole team of folks around us here at our DawgNation World headquarters to bring me the news when it happens. So I may be a couple seconds behind y'all, but I'll get there eventually with a lot of this big news, including Davad Wilson. I love to see the excitement about Wilson in the comment section. Love what Van Bird says, who says, "Welcome to the dog family, Davad." That's also a name, by the way, that Chris Smith was talking about last night. He was with us at the Marlowe's Emory Point for our Countdown to Signing Day event. I'm actually going to share some of the audio from Smith on the show here later on this week. I really liked a lot of what Smith had to say. He really won that crowd over last night in a big way, and one of the names that he was excited about was Davad Wilson. It goes back to what we were just talking about with Mike Johnson a moment ago. Very good players want to play with other very good players. These elite guys want to team up with each other, and it seems that Smith and Davad Wilson, what is it they call it, the League of Shadows there with those Georgia defensive backs, it seems like they got the idea of kind of forming their own sort of mini super team as a position group, and I think Wilson's a terrific add there. Derek Lucas talking about Chris Smith being funny, and he really is a funny guy. Really great personality on that young man who seems to be enjoying all of this the way that you want him to. And, that's always been my thought on this. Most of us don't really know what it feels like to ever have a chance to play big-time college football. I can't even imagine from a mental standpoint what it must be like to realize that you're going to go and play on this gigantic stage and have guys like me sort of obsessing over every move that you make. I can't imagine what that must be like. But you hope, though, that if you ever were in that spot, you'd have the wherewithal to enjoy it. You'd have just the wisdom to appreciate how much of a special opportunity that is. And when I see Chris Smith last night, that's absolutely the thought that I get. That this is a guy who's not only good enough to be in this moment, but sort of wise enough to appreciate how special it all is, and he's just taking it in stride, and he's soaking it up every moment, excited about signing his letter of intent today, excited about being at Georgia eventually. It's just a cool thing. Yeah, he's a cool guy, and he and Davad Wilson are going to team up together to be sure. Still more talk coming in about the surprise from Jeff Sintel. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Let me reset a little bit more here, and then we'll kind of get there. Jamari Salyer makes it official a few minutes ago, live in Atlanta at a special event. He does make his commitment announcement here on the start of early signing day, and then he'll sign his letter of intent and become part of the Georgia Bulldogs. And by the way, how about that Die Hards Kroger commitment video? For those of you who don't realize, DawgNation.com has been a website now for a while. We have some sister sites as well. SEC Country. I talk about that all the time. We also have landof10.com, which covers the Big Ten. And we added here this football season a brand new website called diehards.com. It's more of a national site. Covers the ACC, covers the Big 12, covers the Pac-12, and some of our SEC coverage also kind of gets rolled into that as well. And they like to help us foot the bill here for some of these commitment videos that we do. Of course, we could not do these without Kroger, who's, listen, nobody loves DawgNation like Kroger does. Kroger is a huge supporter of Georgia fans everywhere, and they love the idea of being able to roll these commitment videos out and let y'all see them. And the one that we just saw earlier of Jamari Salyer was an incredible video. If you have not seen it, you need to make sure you do. We played it for you earlier, and so it's exciting news. I'm seeing some Cook stuff rolling in here. That may be getting ready to be official. Let's check on that to make sure that's official. And then it is official. Okay, so it is official now. James Cook has signed his letter of intent. He is going to be a part of the Georgia Bulldogs. Dogs adding Nation's number 1 and number 3 running back here for the class of 2018. And that song that's all over the radio, the Thunder and Lightning. Listen, that's exactly what Zamir and Cook have the opportunity to be. Now, Zamir White's got his own brand of lightning. He's pretty fast in his own right, but he certainly can lower that shoulder and drop the boom. And James Cook is just as fast as they come. We actually had a little highlight video that we sort of worked up for him that I was looking at on our DawgNation Facebook page the other day, or I guess I was looking at it last night, this morning. He's a fast dude, man. So to be able to add him in with Zamir White, a tremendous addition to the Georgia Bulldogs here. Great news on Cook, who does sign with Georgia here. The signature is in. That is official. James Cook signs with Georgia. He is all set to go here. So that's exciting news on that front. All right, a couple other pieces of news to reset here. Elijah Moore does flip, for those of you just joining us on the video. Moore does flip to Ole Miss here today. The longtime Georgia wide receiver commit. The thought here is this may open up a spot for Tommy Bush, a wide receiver in February, who I think fits the mold of what Georgia's looking for a little bit more. Bush probably more of an outside receiver, and that's probably what Georgia's looking for right now. I know Bush really had a good time on his official visit to Georgia this past weekend, so Moore's departure may be good news for Tommy Bush there on that front. And, of course, let me show you the graphic here of what to expect for the rest of the day. Now, for those of you who are watching us on or listening to us on podcast form on the radio, some of this you'll know by the time you hear the show. But for those of you who are watching us right now, here's what to expect throughout the rest of the day here. The 5-star quarterback Justin Fields will make it official with his signature coming up at noon today at a ceremony at Harrison High School. Chris Smith going at a ceremony in Atlanta today around noon as well. He'll make it official. Of course, he's all dog, but he'll sign that letter of intent. He's excited about doing that. Adam Anderson, the 5-star linebacker from Rome, he's going to make his signature official today around 12:30 p.m. And we will be back on DawgNation Daily, sort of a special DawgNation live broadcast, and sometime around 11:45 a.m. Eastern Time, around noon today. We'll bring you the Field signature. We'll bring you the Adam Anderson signature live here. We'll also react to some of the other news that comes out. So we'll do that with you a little later on, and we'll also preview what happens at 2:30 and 3 p.m. These are approximate times here, but 2:30 and 3 p.m. with both Cade Mays, the 5-star offensive lineman from Knoxville, Tennessee, who's getting ready to make his announcement, and the 5-star defensive end Brenton Cox from Stockbridge, Georgia, who's also getting ready to make his announcement. We'll do all that with you coming up around 2:33 p.m. today. Some of you want to talk about the surprise. Let me get ready to do that. I also my stream froze up on me here, so let me get ready to pull that back up. I'll get ready to take some more of your comments as we chat about this stuff here today. So last night, after the broadcast was over at Marlowe's in Emory Point, I was able to kind of corner Jeff some one-on-one time. And I was like, listen, as a friend, would you be willing to let me know what this surprise is? Can you tell me what it is? And listen, y'all, sometimes Jeff plays coy even with me. I wish that he told me everything that he knew. Sometimes he doesn't. And the reason why he probably doesn't is probably for good reason. He knows the first thing I'm going to do after he tells me is come right here in front of this microphone and start telling all of y'all. So sometimes Jeff does keep things a secret from me in that regard. So I still don't know who the surprise is. I still don't know who it's going to be. But we'll keep watching, keep unfolding. And, I think there are a few things today that sort of qualify as a potential surprise. You heard Devod Wilson announce his decision a moment ago. We had some people in the comment section said, I think that might be the surprise. You've heard a lot of different names mentioned as a possibility here. It may be a little while before we ever actually officially hear for sure on what all that's going to be. Derek Lucas says it's Cade Mays. We'll find out what Cade Mays is doing. Maybe that's the case. We'll have to see. Why don't we do this, though, while we have some time here? This is normally the portion of the day anyway where we take some comments, So let's roll through and let's take some questions and comments here on DawgNation Daily. We'll kind of invite some of those in. Barry Davis asking about the status of Jacob Eason. Of course, with guys coming into the program, there's always the thought of who might be going out. And I think that, I think we're going to hear something about Eason one way or another pretty early on when Georgia's season ends, whether it ends after the first or after that second Monday in the month of January after the national championship game. I think we'll hear something about Eason pretty soon on that, and I think it'll be interesting to see how, Georgia handles this situation. If I had to guess, my guess is that maybe Jacob Eason does look for a new home, but the situation, I believe, is probably a little bit more complicated than it maybe initially seems at first blush. And, I think that Jacob Eason deserves a lot of credit for being a great teammate for Georgia here, not making whatever his own decision is a distraction, whether he's staying or going. He hasn't allowed himself to become a distraction whatsoever. A great tweet before the SEC championship game that sort of showed kind of a team-first attitude. I think his comments in the open locker room after that game is over with were all very team-first. I'm sure privately he's disappointed that he's not playing. How could he not be? But publicly he's doing and saying all the right things here. So I'm going to give Eason a lot of credit on that. And if he does choose to go to a new spot, I certainly think that Dog fans will wish him well, kind of wherever that is, because I think he's done a good job here for Georgia. Some of y'all asked where Jeff's intel is today. Jeff was at the Jamari Salyer announcement here a moment ago. I think that he's also, well, the truth is I don't know everywhere Jeff's going today. I think he's sort of crisscrossing the state here a little bit. So Jeff will be back with us here on DawgNation Daily on Friday. David Simpson says, how about the recruit that can make the biggest impact in 2018? Let's think about that for a moment. I think that Jamari Salyer's got to be in that discussion. I think that Adam Anderson's going to be in that discussion. I just think that, when you think about what guys like Walter Grant might be able to do as replacements for Davin Bellamy and Lorenzo Carter, I think you feel pretty good about the Georgia outside linebacker position. But you also think about, an opportunity for young guys to sort of step up, earn the way in and playing. And to me, Anderson, I just think he looks amazing on the film that you get a chance to see. We've actually been able to capture some of that here at DawgNation.com. This guy looks really good getting after the quarterback. That's a name that would kind of come up for me. I don't know that there's a bigger name, though, than Salyer in that regard. I think he's one of those that you have to consider. And then you also have to sort of look and see, how does this linebacker group sort of fill itself out before it's all said and done? Is there a guy that sort of projects as an outside linebacker that can be kind of transitioned to that inside linebacker role for a freshman season that can maybe help fill some of the athleticism void that could be gone if Roquan Smith, and it's likely that he will, if Roquan Smith goes on to the NFL. I think it's one of those things that's going to be interesting to see and really watch for. You may have to wait a while to see how that full class comes together, but that's one of those things worth paying attention to. Is how full does this linebacking group get before it's all said and done, and how many of those guys have a way to find their way on the field here? I think that's a great question. It's one of those things we'll certainly talk about. Shannon Castleman says, quit worrying about the surprise. We're finishing 1, 2, or 3 in recruiting. Yeah, listen, I mean, one way or another, there's going to be a lot of pleasant surprises for Georgia today. Could Georgia pull a Cade Mays? Could Georgia pull a Brenton Cox? Could, he already found out Georgia adds a Devad Wilson. You've already seen some, if not outright surprises, certainly pretty pleasant pieces of information, new news coming in. So we'll roll through and kind of watch some of that here as well. Billy Mathis says how long I'm going to be on for today. So we're going to get off the air at normal time here in a moment. This is a very different episode of DawgNation Daily. I appreciate y'all kind of being with us for a slightly different format as we cover this live, and this is especially true for our podcast audience. And I try to be very mindful of the folks who listen to the show and don't watch it, because that's where we started here on DawgNation Daily. I want to be incredibly loyal to that group. So if you're listening only, what you hear today may sound a good bit different than what you're used to. But we will get off the air like normal time at 11 a.m., but then we'll be back sometime around 11:45. We'll do Justin Fields live. We'll do Adam Anderson live, and we will preview Cade Mays, Brenton Cox. And by the way, if you want like sort of in the moment reaction for Brenton Cox, for Cade Mays, a great place for that today is AT&T SEC Country Live at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on the SEC Country Facebook page. Especially how if those decisions go the way of the Georgia Bulldogs, you may see some pretty angry Tennessee fans, some Alabama fans, and I don't know if there'll be any Clemson fans in there complaining, but a lot of folks will be mad at the haul that the Georgia Bulldogs are putting together. It may be worth that alone just to get to AT&T SEC Country Live today, just to enjoy the hating. Am I okay for saying that? The hating that goes on against Georgia if they put the class together that looks like they might be able to. Danny Smith says Georgia needs at least one more elite defensive back to add to this great class. And, that feels like Tyson Campbell you're talking about there. That's another one of those guys that Georgia's going to wait on until February. And y'all know the February situation. I mean, at one point in time, Channing Tindall was thought to maybe be a February guy. I guess now that's somewhat up in the air. Looks like, Luke Ford may be certainly not an early signee announcement for a Luke Ford. Georgia fans are hoping for him. That may be a wait. Tyson Campbell, whether he goes to Georgia or not, one way or another, is going all the way to February. Looks like Otis Reese is going all the way to February. So, Georgia's doing a lot of work here through this early signing period. But when the smoke clears, there'll still be 4 or 5 names out there that here on DawgNation Daily we're going to keep talking about for the next really few weeks. So, elite defensive back, if you want that 5-star guy, you have to wait on Tyson Campbell to February. I still think that's a hard win for Georgia. I think that's a tough one for Georgia to pull there. But every time I say it's not going to happen, some of y'all shout me down. So I'm going to take y'all's word on that one, at least for a moment. Miriam Martin Corbin says they hate us because they ain't us. There's going to be a lot of that around the SEC here lately. A lot of that. Antoine Clowers says, how about KJ Henry? When does Henry make his decision? That's sometime in the 4 p.m. hour, 4:30, something like that for KJ Henry, who's going to be making his announcement then. Kenneth Cowan says, do we not have room for both the 4-star and 5-star wide receivers? So here's the thing about why you don't see a 5-star wide receiver in this year's class. Georgia right now has got commitments in 2019 from the nation's 2 top receivers for next season, Jaden Hazelwood. And I mean, I say this all the time, I'm much more of a fan than I am a scout, but you watch Hazelwood on film. First of all, this guy really runs and jumps and catches. He also lays the lumber when he's blocking. He had a block during a game at one point this season that was, it was like a double down the line. It was a smack. He's a physical receiver, really good-looking guy, nation's number 1 prospect at that spot. And then Dominic Blaylock, who we had Dom on from our Marlowe's and Roswell show 2 weeks ago. So when you've got those 2 guys who project as, the true outside threat receivers, sort of game-breaking, sort of putting some space between themselves and defensive backs. When you've got those guys in there, that's going to take your priority away from the same type of player in 2018. You're just getting better guys in 2019 you're going to get in 2018. I think what the Georgia priority was in 2018 was to sort of fill that kind of, slot position receiver, that guy that can kind of come in and do some of that kind of stuff, maybe a slightly bigger version of what Isaiah McKenzie was for Georgia. And then, that's, I believe, what the role that Kearis Jackson's going to play for the Dogs here. I think that Kearis kind of actually fills that spot here for Georgia this season. If you look, most of the other receivers that Georgia was kind of considering and flirting with were guys that were kind of also in that Kearis mold. I'm thinking about, Josh Vann, who ends up signing with South Carolina. But some of the names that you heard there in that spot were those kinds of players. And Kirby even alluded to that signing day last year. Kirby makes a little bit of a tradition to, I say tradition, he's been in Georgia now for two signing days, so I don't know how much of a full-fledged tradition this is. But he'll mention in the press conference what he wants to work on the following year. He talked about offensive tackles for the class of 2017, went out and did it. He talked about slot receiver, at least somewhere in some interview at some point for the class of 2018. I think that's what KRS is going to be. So that was the 2018 priority. And James Crump also kind of echoing that as well. That's what Georgia was looking to do, add those guys in 2019. And I think they're both going to be really good. Really good. Greg Williams on the Georgia receiver front says, Georgia's also got guys like Godwin and Hardman, and that's very, very true. And I'm big fans of both Godwin and Hardman. Y'all know that. But what I do believe is, I do believe that you're going to see a difference in Georgia at the wide receiver position 2-3 years from now that's going to be stark and it's going to be noticeable. Because, ultimately Godwin, terrific athlete, very good football player, but a guy that's learned the receiver position, maybe not a natural wide receiver. I think the same thing's true for McCole Hardman. We've actually watched him learn the receiver position here over the course of his 2 years at Georgia. Terrific athlete, the kind of guy you got to find a way to get the football in his hand because he's just lightning quick and dynamic. But this is a guy that's learned how to play wide receiver. With the possibility of Kearis Jackson, Dominic Blaylock, Jaden Hazelwood, I think these are more like true full-fledged receivers who kind of come into Georgia with maybe some more polished skills. And I think that's just going to be an unbelievable weapon to add to what Georgia already has. Great offensive line, and Georgia eventually is going to be one. Embarrassment of riches at quarterback. You know the story at running back. And now when you add those stretch the field receivers to what you've already got going on offensively, this thing of teams stacking the box against Georgia and keying on stopping the run, it's going to be a lot harder to do that in the future when Georgia brings these 2019 receivers in. Derek Lucas says that Jeff needs a helicopter. Yeah, it's probably a pretty good point. Daniel Goldsmith also brings up something else in the receiver front, that J.J. Holloman, who looked great in the G-Day game, Matt Landers, who's been raved about for his work on the scout team this year, those are also guys you have to think about in the future as well. And, Holloman was like he's a top 25 guy in his position, isn't that right? Top 25 guy in his position for the class of 2017. I expect things from him. Matt Landers has the size that you want. He kind of has that Javon Wims thing going on. Yeah, and so I think both those guys can be heard from. Ryan Green says that Cade Mays is just plain nasty. We need that guy, too, as kind of an enforcer. I do think that Mays is emerging here as one of the most popular potential names for Georgia on this day of potential surprises and good news. I think Mays is one of those sort of top of wish list type guys. Now, for me, my guy is Brenton Cox. That is the guy that I want. I just think that, I think he looks really, really good. And I love taking players from Alabama. I just do. I just think that's a bold statement for a program. But I understand why so many of y'all like Cade Mays as much as you do. Okay, so Ryan Richardson says, just saw the Jamari Salyer video. I like that he did the Suge Knight Source Award thing at the end. So Ryan so I thought that's what that was. These young kids that do the show with me, they didn't know the Suge Knight speech. Y'all have never seen that speech before? Y'all have never seen that? Yeah, these guys. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Suge Knight speech? Y'all haven't seen that? Michael, come on the air for a moment. Michael Shalab was one of our producers. Terrific guy, but he's like, he's so young. Have you not seen the Suge Knight Source Award speech?
No, I haven't.
All right, you got to watch this on. Can you watch it on YouTube right now?
Yeah.
All right, search it where he takes a shot like, I don't even know what he's called now. He's Puff Daddy back then.
What am I searching? Suge Knight what?
If you search Suge Knight Source Awards, it should be easy to find.
Right.
So watch that video. That is what Jamari Salyer is doing in the commitment video, right? He's doing the Suge Knight speech. So Michael's going to watch that. We're going to educate him. Listen, if I'm educating you on hip-hop history, then we've got a real problem, because I know about that much hip-hop history, but I do know the Suge Knight speech. And it was a great version of that from Jamari Salyer. Jimmy Barnes says, cue up the video. Do we have time? Do we have time to watch the video one more time before we get out of here? Can we do the Jamari Salyer video? Okay, so for those of you just joining us, let's see the Salyer video here one more time. When you're ready to roll on that, give me a thumbs up. And for those of you just joining us, we'll let you see what I thought. I thought the Trey Hill one was pretty good. This Jamari Salyer video is pretty good as well. And by the way, do I get an IMDb credit for the video? Because I make a little appearance in this one here as well. Take a look.
All right, here we go.
My name is Jamari Salyer. I've been rated as one of the top prospects in the nation. I've made my commitment, and I will share that today. But before I do, you need to know about my first football practice with my father.
Jay Boogie, let's go. Time for your first football practice.
I'd had my first football practice at Glenwood Hills.
Tomorrow, let's go.
My dad taught me the basics, and he told me to run some laps, and then he left. While I was running, I thought, was he gonna come back? He met me later with a Powerade and some Skittles. He asked me had I ever stopped running. I told him I never did. I learned about integrity that day. Integrity is what you do when no one's watching. But today, everyone will be watching.
And the SEC Country Offensive Lineman of the Year award goes to Jamari Salyer, Pace Academy.
When some guys commit, they dance around it to keep everyone guessing. That's not me. I just want to come out with it.
First of all, I'd like to thank God
Second of all, I'd like to thank my Pace Academy football family, coaches, players, both sides of the ball. You know what I'm saying? I want to tell my boy Zeus, keep his offensive guards up. We ride with him. And one more thing I'd like to say. Any dogs out there who want to be a part of a rare breed, meaner than savages. You don't care about stars and rankings. You want to break records instead of listening to them? Come to Georgia. I'm Jamari Salyer, and I'm a Georgia Bulldog. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so listen, I think that's just a great job. And that, Michael, come back on. So you watched the Suge Knight
Yeah, I
video,
just
right?
watched it, yeah.
That's first of all, the Suge Knight thing's pretty cool,
That
right?
is good. Yeah, I don't know how I've never seen that because I'm pretty big into hip hop.
Yeah, so
I like
that's a great thing. And Jamari does a pretty good Suge Knight right there, right?
He really does. 100%. That's definitely what he's going for sure.
Yeah, I thought it was a cool video. Good stuff. And by the way, thanks to Michael and everybody else who've helped keep us on the air all day long here. So it is our normal time to get off the air. I'm going to do that, let these folks kind of cover some of the rest of the stuff. If you can join us, we'll be back around 11:45. We'll bring the Justin Fields signature to you live. We'll do Adam Anderson live. We'll preview Cade Mays. We'll preview Brenton Cox. We'll just be all over Georgia recruiting, kind of wherever it is. We'll talk about James Cook being in the fold. Y'all know the drill. We'll kind of cover everything as it kind of unfolds. By the way, special thanks to Kroger for being a part of our Jamari Salyer Diehards commitment video there. We would not have as much fun here at DawgNation if it was not for our friends at Kroger. We really appreciate that. I appreciate you too. 3 p.m. Eastern time today. I'll be on the AT&T SEC Country Live program on the SEC Country Facebook page. We'll see you there for all that on a busy day around the SEC and a dominant day for DawgNation. Y'all have a good day.